Good evening and welcome to the pre-show part of DFA. It's Martin North here from Digital Finance Analytics. We're ready to go. Edwin's getting suited up and I'll introduce him in just a moment or two. We'll just let the clock run for a moment. We'll just go into pre-show mode. Great to see so many people on and enjoying some of the pre-chat conversation. I haven't acknowledged a whole bunch of people, which I should do, but I won't because it'll take too long. So nice to see a number of old names, a few new names as well. Welcome to this very important show. Probably one of the most important we've done, actually, and specifically now with what's happening to the property market. I'm just going to run this for another 30 seconds, and then we'll run the intro, and then we'll bring Edwin in, and we'll get started formally. So we've got nearly 500 on the stream already, and Cookie Boy is standing by to make a donation to charity if we get over 1,500. So let's see whether we can do that. Spread the word. Spread the word. This is an important show. All right, I'm just going to take the pre-show off. I'm just going to run the intro, and then when I come back, we'll start formally. Well, good evening and welcome to this live stream event on the 28th of July 2020. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Great to have you all on board today, and I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend time with Edwin and myself. I've got Edwin on standby. Just before I go across to him, I just want to make the point that this isn't financial advice. Please do play nice in the chat room and no racial slurs. The stream is being moderated. Plex is doing a great job. Thanks, Plexus, for that. This is as at the 28th of July 2020 if you're watching this later. And if you want to ask a question, use @WalkTheWorld to get my attention because there's just so much going on. And we've also enabled Super Chat, and I saw that one or two, Javier, thank you very much for that, and Tital, appreciate that. That's a way of getting my attention and also making a contribution to what we do. Really appreciate that too. Now, without further ado, let me push a couple of buttons and bring Edwin into the scene. So first we will do that, and then if I push that one there, Edwin, you should be on.
Yeah, g'day, Martin. So, not sure which way we're going to go with this. Is it going to be, what are we doing here? Is it going to be Muay Thai, kickboxing, just boxing? What are we doing?
Well, something very violent, clearly, and something that is clearly going to shake a few people up, right?
Well, I didn't know who you're going to bring on, so I got ready with the headgear. I didn't know it was going to be the Hedonic, where it was going to be somebody from the REA, or what. So I just decided to wear everything. I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
Okay, you're fully kitted up. That's good to know. Yeah. No, it's great to have you on again, Edwin. And look, there's so much to talk about. And I think perhaps what we should do, there's probably three things that I would like to do today. The first is let's just have a bit of a discussion around three specific points. One about property indices, right? We'll have a bit of a discussion around the question of listings, right? And then we'll go from there and maybe talk about some of the other metrics that are being spruiked. And I guess a good place to start is one of your favorites. I'm just going to show everybody this particular chart because it is pretty hilarious. Let me just put you on full screen so we can get that to there. There you go. The search index at its best. Edwin, what's your opinion of this particular approach to the marketing like this?
When we first started hearing about the search index, it was always about the how overseas investors were searching on the REA site, and how all of a sudden they were going to be the lifeline that the property market needed at the time earlier on in the year, or as we were going through the pandemic. I mean, then it just became more and more farcical that people were actually relying on this search or the spruikers were relying on this search index, and this search index was being propagated to the mainstream, throughout the mainstream media, and as well as propagated to the unfortunate bastards that were at these seminars, and they were eating this up by the plate loads. It's amazing how a major property platform that's listed on the ASX can actually pay individuals to write this rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. So ding ding, that's round one. For me.
Yeah, very good. And isn't the point there that just because listings are going up, that doesn't actually mean anything about interest in the market or translate to sales or anything, right? It's all a furphy.
Yeah, well, the thing is that they were really going on about how the numbers of searching online was going up, and it was going absolutely ballistic. And as I said, a lot of it was based on allegedly from Asia or China in particular, and it was really a lifeline that the mainstream would have hoped that they wanted to turn into hope that it would save the market. But as I said back earlier this year, they are not coming back to Australia. And then we saw the border shut down, and then I was very vocal about the students as well, and further on, and here we are. And I don't expect students to be back into Australia, given the political tenure that we're on about now, and the political issues that we have to walk through as a nation when it comes to China, and what we're going to be going through over the next 6-12 months. The question is, are the students going to be back in 12 months? Are they going to be back in 18 months or 2 years? I can't see them coming back anytime soon to save the market. That's the students. Then you've got the interest, the so-called interest by the high-flying Chinese investors that were supposed to be coming in, and AFR went really hard on this one as well. They started promoting that, the high-flying Chinese investors were going to come back. As far as the AFR are concerned, they were supposed to be back 2.5 months ago. I'm still yet to see the plane loads come in. As a matter of fact, I'm still yet to see anybody coming. If anything, what I've been reporting with Toorak, avid commentator, what we've been reporting on and sharing with our followers on Twitter and your followers and your viewers is the fact that the high flyers and the people in China are stumped at the moment, are stumped because of the not only the political climate, but also they're stumped because of the economic situation that they're facing. They need to protect their principal places of residence. They need to protect their businesses before they start thinking about dumping money back into Australia. If anything, what we're going to have is we only need to have 1% of the properties that the Asian investors have here in Sydney to come onto the market, and we will double the amount of properties that are online. We're tracking at about 18,500 at the moment at the top, and it's winter. If we have another 18,500 properties drop, but let's be even a little bit more conservative, and let's say if we only had another 2,500 properties drop onto the market for sale in Sydney, as I said before, Martin, it's going to be we're going to be on life support when it comes to the sellers are going to be on life support because we don't have the buyers to absorb any more listings than what we've already got on the market.
Yeah, well, here's an interesting comment from Nishant. So people working from home have lots of time on their hands and are now browsing through the real estate portals, and that's what's driving the views higher. But REA is trying to spruik this.
Well, NISAP's probably one of those people that are searching on REA 5 times a day, and unfortunately, NISAP get off the REA site and go over to Domain.
Oh, very good. Okay, now the next thing I wanted to touch on was the issue of the listings, right? And particularly the Hedonic Predictive Price Guide. And you've got this amazing chart. Talk us through it.
Well, as you know how I feel about the Hedonic, and I do want to make the Hedonic great again, but great again in terms of reality, not great again in terms of fallacy and the propaganda that he puts out. So what we've got here, Martin, is we've got a few listings that I've shared with you. That these are sales, executed sales. They're being sold under auction and private treaty campaigns, and the Hedonic Index puts one of the properties something like 60% above its value. It actually got sold at auction 2 weeks ago for $1.4 million, and the Hedonic Index says that it's worth 2.5. Now, the predictive Hedonic Index is what the mainstream and a lot of agents rely on in order to give market guides or market appraisals for properties, and when they do the give guides or for the suburbs or the mainstream media rely on those guides in order to more or less track what the market's doing. So in this case, these two properties, one was sold 2 weeks ago, the other one was sold about 6 weeks ago, and they have been registered. The registered sales appear on the back end of CoreLogic, but the predictive guides sit well and truly above what the actual sales were. So what that does is that gives you a false impression, a false guide as to what the values are tracking in this particular region of Sydney. Now, this is just a couple of the many that I've come across, and it should be alarming. And the mainstream media should be picking up on this. My question is, again, why isn't the mainstream media picking up on this? Why are they we know why, but I asked the question openly, and hopefully somebody from the mainstream is watching and they're taking note of this rubbish that is put out there, that the RBA rely on, that the banks rely on, that people are relying on in order to make property purchase decisions.
Yeah, and isn't there the point there that in situations where, in fact, the settlement price was a bit higher, that seems to go directly in. When the settlement price is on the lower side, it never seems to go in. Yeah,
that was the other snapshots that I shared. Look, it's interesting how we've got the in other cases in other areas and in the same area as well. If the properties go above the value of the Hedonic predictive index, they seem to appease straight away, and that's quite concerning. So if they can do that for properties, that basically what it tells me is that they get the information from the main portals, they get the information and they're relying on that information even before the properties settle or are registered with the Value General, before they're actually officially settled. So if they're able to do that with properties that sell on or above or just below the predictive guide, why can't they do it with everything? My thing is, if they did it with all the properties, and given the fact that a lot of agents aren't disclosing the sale prices now when it comes to auction sales as well, or even private treaty sales, they're not disclosing it, they're not making it readily available. So there are major issues with the way that this index works, this index operates, and nobody knows how they come up with the numbers anyway. So what I'm saying is, in the main, is that realistically, some areas of Sydney have seen anywhere from 7 to 15% drops in values, realistic drops in values in a lot of parts and segments of Sydney, regions as well as smaller pockets. And I can see those trends by following the listings and by your followers, my followers on Twitter. They share with us on the DM.
Yeah, and what we're going to do a bit later is we'll go into some more detail and look at some specific examples of prices. Here's an interesting question from Safi, which you might want to touch on. Can you guys talk about the Northwest Sydney bubble? It feels like every time they really grant, the builder developer boosts the price in Box Hill and Schofields.
That is absolutely farcical, and I think I tagged ScoMo on a couple of my tweets, so to make him aware of what's going on there. As soon as the government, whether it be the state government or the federal government, start talking about these grants, dishing out free money, more money for first home buyers, the first thing that happens, and it's happened for decades, and that is that the developers and property owners basically inflate the values of the prices, or first of all, they take some of these, in this case, the home and land packages, take them off market. They wait until it becomes, these grants become legislated, until they become official, and then they bring the listings back on market, and you find the difference in prices almost the same or just below what the government's going to dish out. But here's the problem, Martin, and this is what a lot of people don't understand also, and the government doesn't understand, and that is that this is going to put a lot of pressure on established homes in those areas that are already up for sale. As I said, supply and demand. When there's a lot more properties on the market for sale, obviously there's going to be pressure on existing listings, and the values can only go one way, and that's south. Now, if first-home buyers are encouraged to buy these new dwellings, first of all, they're buying new dwellings because they've got access to free money, easy money, or extra bits of money that the government's dishing out. So they prefer to buy an $800,000 dwelling out in Schofields, out in Box Hill, out in wherever it is, Jordan Springs, or down South Campbelltown Way and beyond, and the like. And because they're getting some free money, and the government's also throwing in some extra bit of money as a loan as well. Right, so the established homes in those areas that are being established for only about, say, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, that are on the market at around the 700, 720, they're not even going to get a look in by the first home buyers that are jumping in. The difference is this: the older established homes potentially sit on about an extra 100, anywhere between 75 to 100, 150 square metres of land. The newer homes, the new subdivisions that I've noted around Sydney and these areas that the questions are being asked of, they've gone down to about 275 square metres as parcels of land. These are not your original blocks of land. They've come a long way from your quarter-acre blocks of just over 1,000 square metres to townhouse blocks, as far as I'm concerned. But yet they are valued $100,000 more because they're new, because of all this free money, than the established properties. So the established properties are going to linger on. The more they linger on, the more pressure is coming on these investors that bought these properties, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. The tenants are vacating. They're empty, so there's going to be more on the market. So by the time these first-home buyers are jumping in on the market on this free money, by the time their homes are completed, they're not going to be worth 800. They're not even going to be worth 700. They're probably going to be worth about 620, as far as I'm concerned, because the other more established homes, albeit a year older or 18 months older, sit on bigger parcels of land. And how much can a house age in a matter of years anyway?
Yeah, and of course, if you look at Western Australia, which is the really archetypal example, they basically, once a home builder grant at the federal level was announced, at the state level, they announced additional incentives for people to go buy planned and off-the-plan land and house packages in Western Australia. And they had 100 and something increase in sales the following month, right? So, what that is doing is basically increasing the already large supply of existing and new properties there. It's also devaluing the value in older properties in the same area, and it's basically giving jobs for the construction sector, but it's actually doesn't make a lot of sense economically, and many people are paying more than they would if they actually bought an older property on a bigger block.
That's right. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to, what valuers put value on is the land as well. Yes, the dwelling has a value, has an intrinsic value, depending on the inclusions and everything else. We won't go into too much detail there. But the land is what appreciates in value. The houses depreciate in value, and that's even the most adamant spruiker on in Australia will tell you that, and that's hence the reason why you work out depreciation schedules and you can you can negatively gear and everything else. You can't negatively gear land because land in essence doesn't depreciate in value. I mean, it does. Technically, but not according to the spruikers. So what I'm trying to get at is, at the end of the day, it's the parcel of land that will dictate the value of the property. Hence the reason why we've got pegging orders when we're looking at properties for clients in terms of what would be of lesser value and what of greater value. Of course, of lesser value are the high-rise apartments, and of greater value are your quarter acre blocks of land, albeit with older homes, but effectively they've been renovated. At the end of the day, the outside skin, the bricks or the cladding or the fibro, it's just a raincoat. It's the internal stuff that matters more. And you can always change the raincoat. You can always put a new coat on. You can always put you can always put Hebel. You can always do all sorts of things to the outside of the property. But look, we won't go into too much detail into that. But the land plays a big role in terms of pricing.
Yeah, and Sean actually said the trouble is, of course, a lot of the new stuff that's being built is of very poor quality, which is the point you just made. Otto's made an interesting question, which I'm interested in your perspective, Edwin. For 30 years, the property industry has relied on the greater full, and as lending standards were relaxed and rates dropped further, the greater full has always turned up. So my question to you, Edwin, is do you think we're out of greater fulls now?
No, we're not. I don't think we're out of greater fulls. I've seen some purchases in some areas, and people have shared a number of purchases once again on the platforms that we usually comment on, where people have paid silly money. Some people have got more. Some people have got more money than sense. Look, in one case, the greater full is Lindsay David posted I'm not saying Lindsay's a fool. He's a very smart man. Just want to make a note of that. He posted a Facebook page of the spruiker, and I went into that Facebook page to see what it was all about, and there's this spruiker, talking about all the grants and all the construction, all the free money that the government's given because of COVID, because of this, to stimulate the economy and this and that, and if you buy new and this and that. And towards the end of his presentation, he turned around and turns to the camera and says, and I believe in this so much that I got my son to buy a house and land package in Queensland. There's your greater fool. Yeah, the old man, the father that gets his own son, puts him in the hog for over $150,000. I remember properties that in Queensland, when I first started looking into Queensland, buying properties in Queensland, the properties at that time that we bought for $65,000 were townhouses, 3-bedroom townhouses in Logan City, that the Japanese had bought a decade before for $175,000. And if people think that properties are not going to go down in value by up to 40, 50, 60%, in a lot of places, in a lot of areas of the capital cities of the many states, they've got rocks in their head. They're your greater tools because they're the ones that are jumping in. I'm looking at listings now that from people that have put the properties back on the market, that they bought in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and a couple in 2019. I've attended them, I've looked at the homes, and I've made offers on those listings on behalf of my clients. Offers of on or below what they paid for in 2015. And I've seen in some areas of Sydney property values go down to as low as 2015. And you don't have to go. You can look at my tweets. I've tweeted a lot about Lane Cove and in Chatswood. That is an area that's absolutely getting hammered. The next area that's going to get hammered even more are your North Kellyvilles, your Box Hills, your Schofields, your ponds, and all these areas that let's not forget these were floodplains. These were 1 in 100 or 1 in 50 floodplains that the water just got redirected through the many earthworks that had to be done there in order for these subdivisions to take part. Now we've got major issues in Jordan Springs. We've got major issues in those subdivisions around Jordan Springs. Why? Because a lot of the backfill that wasn't done and compacted properly. Now it's coming unstuck, and on top of that, they've got wafer slabs. The concrete slabs that are put on your polystyrene foam bits there in order to reduce the amount of concrete that you use. But the thing is, as the land gets saturated, and as the land either gets saturated with a lot of water or shrinks because there's not enough water, well, these slabs can't cope. And what you've got is you've got driveways that are sinking, or you've got actual slabs. And I've seen homes with slabs that have cracked right down the middle of the house and have risen a good inch to an inch and a half. I mean, and that's where you're going to get more and more of this because all these regions and all these subdivisions that came up overnight, and people are flocking to these areas, whereas they should be staying closer to the established areas. So all this free money is creating all sorts of problems for future generations.
Yeah, it's interesting because Joe made this point. In Queensland, it's not as overvalued. I can buy for 3 times my gross income. Sounds a lot safer than 6 times or 12 times in Sydney. And I guess there are 2 observations there. In Sydney, the income ratios are still mad even now, despite all the tightening of bank lending. And up in Queensland, in certain areas, sure, prices have come way back. But what's interesting is that, and we'll show some of this shortly, that if you look over the long-term trend in Queensland, there are prices that are lower today than they were 10, 12 years ago in some parts of Queensland. And so this whole idea that wherever you look, prices have gone up just isn't true, is it?
Yeah, that's right. And one of the things that when I was looking at property, as I said, in Queensland, and my colleagues and myself, we were also speaking to a lot of developers up there many years ago, and we're looking at selling when they started coming up with these offers of 4, 5, 8, 9, 10% commissions. That's when we stopped looking in Queensland because we just didn't see any value, and a lot of the value, these inflated values of properties in the new subdivisions in Queensland. There'd be very few people that could say they made a lot of money in subdivisions up in Queensland, particularly around Ipswich, Red Hill, and all those areas up there. Look, no matter where you go, you just got to be, as I keep on saying, and I mention over and over again, you just got to be diligent. And for goodness sakes, don't rely on the spruiker that's taking you to a fancy schwancy boardroom and is giving you all these PowerPoint presentations on how property values go double every 7 to 10 years. When you get up there, when they do fly you up there or bus you up there or however they're going to take you up there now, and you are able to cross the border, go and talk to the local agents. Go and talk to and look at your comparable sales as opposed to the subdivisions. Always look at the comparable sales in those areas from the local agents, what they've got on display, what they've got on the books. And I mean, you don't have to leave your land room to be able to do that anyway.
Yeah.
But don't do it on REA, because then the searchable index will just go through the roof.
I love it. So what we're going to do now, let me just start with this one. We're going to look at some individual properties and talk about these properties, but talk about some of the lessons. And we're going to look at, and I should say, Cookie Boy, thanks for looking out some of these. This is one in South Melbourne, 3205, right? And the current advertised sale price is 2.457 million, so up at the top end, right? The property listing sale history is interesting. So it last sold in March 2017 for 2.633 million. So it's already down on where it was based on the advertised price currently. And of course, the advertised sale price may not be the final price that ultimately it's sold at if it gets sold. But the other point that Cookie Boy made, and that's, think about stamp duty. So when this was actually sold back in 2017, the stamp duty was $148,500. So what that says is, as well as the drop in the capital value, you've got that stamp duty. And if you look at my data in that particular area, what's interesting is that whilst mortgage stress is relatively low at 12.5%, rental stress is a problem and investor stress is a problem. So it may well be that some of the reasons why some of these properties are coming back on the market has more to do with the broader issues around investment rather than just on occupation. But what about this idea of stamp duty being a major factor, Edwin, that often seems to get overlooked? Seems to me that's pretty important.
Definitely. And then you look, stamp duty generally runs at about 4.75% of the value of a property, right? And add to that the cost of sale as well. The cost of sale could be 3%, plus or vendor paid advertising inclusive. So there's another added value that people have got to factor in is, because you pay when you sell. Then, as I've discussed in previous podcasts before, Martin, with yourself, and that is typically what we don't see in a lot of these listings. You can with some, but not with all, and that is, how much more money did the purchasers from years ago? How much more did they put into the dwelling? Before they put back on the market. I've seen in some cases in the North Shore where people have invested $400,000-500,000 in properties, and when you add it all up, what they're getting out, albeit that they're getting, you could say, once you do all your sums, they may be losing $50,000 or $100,000, but it's better than at least they're getting out with very little loss. Let alone as we move forward and as more listings come on the market and there's less investors in the market, and there's less investors that have got an appetite for bigger properties. That let's not forget, the reason why a lot of investors got into the bigger properties was because in a lot of, particularly in the Asian, what I call the Asian suburbs, or where the Asian people congregated, is because of they used the rooms, individual rooms, as individual dwellings or boarding houses, and in some cases we're charging up to $350 per week as a boarding house, as opposed to just a short-term letting or that. They basically let out individual rooms. So when you don't have these sort of incomes coming into these areas, and in Sydney we've got them just about everywhere because of the universities that are placed all over Sydney, as well as the central regions or the entertainment regions, that areas along the beaches, along the city, but predominantly areas that are surrounding the universities or places where the students obviously come into studying. So. And a lot of people were able to keep these homes, but now that they're no longer here, and you add to that the second factor, and that is that even prior to them leasing out these rooms as individual rooms or took on boarders per person, and that you could have two people in a room in some cases. Then you've also got the issue of employment. Now we've got an issue of unemployment. So in that case, you may have a buffer because there were two of you gainfully employed, fully employed. Now there's only one party fully employed, the other one underemployed, or you could have both parties now unemployed. So these are the homes that I am seeing coming back on the market predominantly that have been used for these purposes. Now, I don't know much about Melbourne, but I can tell you that it wouldn't surprise me if the demographics fit the same model that I am seeing in the Sydney regions. So that's why I'm also keeping an eye on not only the amount of listings on domain under the Sydney region, but I'm particularly keeping an eye on the homes that are listed. I haven't seen the freestanding homes drop below 8,000 on the domain portal for a while. As a matter of fact, we're edging closer to 8,500, and that just keeps on climbing. And again, we're in winter. We're just halfway through winter, and listings are going up. Typically, we would be regressing or retracting, 15, 20%, but we're not. We continue to climb. And when spring hits, that's going to be greater pressure on all these properties. So the losses are going to be greater because the actual sale values, are going to drop. 5, 10. Could be a cliffhanger, or it might be a gradual descent. Depending on the area and depending on the house.
Well, what's interesting about that, Edwin, my survey suggests that more and more people, particularly property investors, are now getting to the point of seriously thinking about selling. And of course, if you are going to sell, as some would say, panic first if you're going to panic at all, because it's going to be more difficult later, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to see more properties coming on the market relatively soon. And the listings are weird already. I think they're going to get even weirder, frankly. Now I want to show you this one. This is to Toorak. So this is another high-end property, currently advertised at 5.5 million. Cheap at twice the price, I'm sure. Interestingly, it sold back in 2018 at 7.25 million. So there's been quite a drop there, and think of the stamp duty, makes your eyes water. And interestingly, that even in these sorts of postcodes, about 30% of people there are struggling from a mortgage stress perspective. Now, that's lower than the national average, but we've also seen some level of default risk, which is actually quite high. And we're also seeing some investors in this postcode also difficulty. So this takes me to the obvious question, Edwin. Everybody's been saying, well, the top end of the market's relatively secure. It's the Western Sydney area. It's all of those things that are actually the issue. But my question to you on that one is, how do we think about the top end of the market? Because it looks to me as though in a number of areas the top end is already falling.
Yeah, look, again, I can only go by what I'm seeing in Sydney, and it's the top end that seems to be hemorrhaging the most at the moment, or it's more obvious. But then you only got to take a shot of tequila and gather your thoughts for a few seconds, and then you begin to think about that. A lot of the top end properties, or a lot of the people who own, you got to ask yourself the question: who own the top end properties? Typically, it'll be business owners. It'll be as what we like to say in slang, the high flyers, and it's businesses that are absolutely getting hammered. And so when you and people that they saw a lot of in a lot of areas of Sydney, they saw values increase by, let's put it in real terms, by anywhere between 300,000 to 500,000 in 1 year. Well, then all of a sudden you've got these scenarios that play out at home, where people say, well, honey, I don't think I need to work anymore, and I've always wanted to have a coffee shop, or I've always wanted to have a hairdressing salon, or I've always wanted to have this or that, or I've always fancied this. That. So where do they go? They go to the equity, and they pull down a lot of equity from these homes, in order to start their businesses. Now, unfortunately, the businesses are failing due to COVID and the pandemic and everything else that we're going through. So they're leaving wrong. You've got a rise in a potentially greater rise in foreclosures of businesses, or in terms of businesses being liquidated. And a lot of these businesses, the mortgages or the loans are attached to the principal places of residence. So people are going to have to make a quick decision. If they get a good offer, they're going to be taking it, and they're going to be dropping 10, 15, 20%. Now 10, 15, 20% may be a small drop and may be a small thing to lose right now in comparison to what's around the corner. And when you talk about properties that are valued 2 million, 3 million, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10% drop of $7,700,000, 20% is 1.4. 10% drop of a property out west out at Box Hill for $700,000 or $750 is $75,000. You could go to ScoMo and you can get a credit card. He'll more than likely give you a credit card or something. Asking for a credit card, and he'll be able to give it to you in order for you to keep the property. But when you're talking about $750,000 from a $7.5 million property, it's a big deal. So I'm seeing that now also in the listings, as I said in the North Shore, where I've got some clients there, and I'm looking at some of the properties there as to what they've got bought for in 2015. So it's not new, it's nothing new, and look, it's the same. Looks like it's the same dynamics that's playing out in Melbourne as it is here in Sydney.
Yeah, well, let's go to Parramatta now, Edwin, and this is Church Street, Parramatta, so you'll be quite familiar with this sort of area, I suspect. For sale, $550,000, one of many, I suspect. Massive reduction. Current owner purchased this apartment in 2015, but due to unforeseen circumstances, 651.7k was what he paid. It's now 550. Don't regret not taking this rare opportunity. And just some data points here. 75% of investors living in this area are stressed. We've got 69% of renters in the area stressed. Mortgage stress isn't too bad, but this explains, I think, a lot of the dynamics around the Parramatta area, where we've had very considerable amounts of construction, particularly high-rise units and things, and prices are definitely on the way down, and pretty quickly, aren't they?
Yeah, look, a number of things about that apartment. It's a one-bedroom. Who's the fool that paid $651,000 for a one-bedroom apartment? Is the first question I'd like to ask. Secondly, those numbers are insane. The first thing you got to take off the bat is when somebody bought that or got sold that, is the fact that the spruiking company, and there's a number of them in that area. I won't name them at the moment, but they've all got funny names and I won't go in funny coloured names and so forth. And the commissions, Martin, on these were 10%. That's the commission. That was what they got paid to put their compatriots in these shoe boxes. And secondly, or thirdly, these are high-rise, more than likely high-rise development that's going to be pulled down after they pull down Opal Tower and Mascot Tower. Mascot Towers. It's probably one of the ones that'll come down, one of the first ones to come down around Parramatta, because it was so badly built. If it doesn't burn out due to the aluminium cladding, the flammable cladding that it's got on it, those numbers. That's not the bottom. The bottom for that apartment is probably about 350,000.
Yeah,
and that's if you've got nothing else to buy. But the options across the river in North Parramatta. At 550,000, you can get 3-bedroom apartments in apartment blocks that in 3-story walk-ups where there are no lifts. You've got a bit more space. You've got a proper lock-up garage, and you can get yourself a decent 3-bedroom apartment, albeit it's 25 years old. But at least you know what you're getting.
Yeah. Well, firstly, Edwin, congratulations. We've passed 1,500 viewers contemporaneously on the channel. So new record held
So
by
does
your
that
good
mean
self.
Does that mean that Cookie Boy's going to
He's got to pony up. He's got to pony up.
$200?
I'm not sure how much it is, but I'm sure that the charity of our choice will be eternally grateful.
Yeah, no, he's a very generous man. He's always been out there. I've seen him posting out a few things, which is good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So thanks, Cookie Boy, for that. Let's just go have another look at another one in Sydney, and then we'll go out to some of the other states. Just so everybody understands, I've got information here for every state and territory across the country in this pack of data. So we will get to every state. I saw people saying, "What about Brisbane? What about Tasmania?" We'll get to them. This is Sydney Olympic Park, and I want to sort of use this as to have a bit of a conversation with this. So this is a 2-bed, 2-bath, 1 garage place. It was actually sold in April 2020 at 1.08. It's now back on the market again. And my observation here is, look at the data. Nearly half of the people here are in mortgage stress. More than 54% are in rental stress. And more than 57% of people who are investors living in the area are stressed. I mean, you've got wall-to-wall stress in this particular area, and of course you've also got all of the construction issues as well, Edwin. I mean, this is really, a really sad tale, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a lot more that's going to come out of all this, and as you and your viewers know, there are a lot of these overly priced properties that got sold off the plan to overseas investors. A lot of the times they were, that they were bought in busloads, plane loads, and bussed out to these areas and sold lemons. In a way, you got to feel sorry for them. But in other ways, you don't, because a lot of the money that came in was money that were taken from the people of the land that rightfully were entitled to that money. So without getting into all the politics and all the detail, we know what a lot of that money is and was. But these areas, because of the situation with your Opal Towers, because of the contamination of the land in that area, because of the fact that they're not being purchased by Chinese investors, we don't have the rentals. The rental vacancies there probably going through the roof. And climbing, and you need a bungee harness in order to safely land. Where the value is going to end up, I wouldn't be surprised if the values in that area drop by 60-70%. And then again, you've got to ask yourself the question: why would you want to buy? Why would you even want to spend $500,000 in that region when you can go a little bit further out and get a townhouse now?
Yep, that's a good question.
Where you've got a bit of land.
Good question, and it's interesting. Did you notice that in Melbourne they've announced they're actually going to they're going to actually rent properties out of the rental sector to house homeless people? Right, so that's basically a government initiative to essentially deal with the rental oversupply and homelessness. Right, I wonder what will happen. Whether we'll actually see New South Wales buying apartments in Opal Tower and other places, because they are responsible, aren't they?
Yeah, well, we already know what they're going to do. We already know what our Premier is going to do. Weren't we told that there was a project in the northwest region that they were going to develop 3,000 apartments there in a pocket there, and then they were also going to develop 1,800 new apartments. They call it homes. I call them apartments in Mount Druitt. Isn't that what they're going to do? They're not going to buy anything. They're going to continue to build. They're going to continue to build, and I've been saying for over a decade, if not longer, that we can't build high rise. We don't know how to build high rise. The majority of the people that do know how to build, let me rephrase that. The builders that do know how to build high rise here in Australia are worth their salt. Are worth their weight in gold. But unfortunately, you can count them in one hand. And the state government are not going to get them as contractors to build the to build these monstrosities that they want to build in the northwest region of the 3,000 apartments and in Mount Druitt area of the 1,800. We've already got 1.2 million properties around Australia. Most of them are in Sydney, Melbourne, and the rest would be in Brisbane region. And yet we're going to build more shoe boxes that are only going to fall to bits because they're going to get the cheapest labourers to build. They're going to and they're only going to have to take shortcuts. We're building them on land that shouldn't have anything more than a 3-story walk up. We're going to be digging basements into water tables that we should be building above, not below the water table lines and so forth. I mean, it's farcical what's going on. They've obviously got no idea that I'd say probably the Cook or one of or maybe Switzer's guiding them with these plans. I'm not sure, but it's got to be somebody that's got vested interest that's guiding the state government in these farcical ideas, when there's a lot more that can be done with all the vacant homes that already exist.
Yeah, and of course the point there is that all of the extra construction activity might do okay for construction jobs, and it'll be dressed up as helping people to enter the market. But of course, it's nothing to do with that. It's all about supporting particular invested interest groups, particularly the construction sector, and just increasing the supply. Now, of course, if they do ultimately solve COVID and open up the migration taps, we can assume that there'll be massive amounts of migration to come in to try and fill some of this empty property. But that's not a good news point either, is it really?
No, it's not. And the thing is, to counter that argument is what about unemployment? We got to solve unemployment before we start bringing in people from Hong Kong, from wherever else. What about our own situation, our own people that are unemployed? Why not do something positive, do something real, and that start building infrastructure? I don't think we've ever come close. We've had a lot of politicians promise the fast rail lines and everything else, but okay, albeit then the excuses are it's too expensive. Well, it's no longer too expensive to build. So they can borrow the money relatively cheap now, a lot cheaper than what they could a year ago, a lot cheaper than what they could 5 years ago, 7 years ago. So now's the time to really start building serious infrastructure. But they're not interested in that. They're just interested in protecting their own little backsides, their own little focus groups, their own people. As I said before, if they were really serious about decentralising the CBD, if they were really serious about putting infrastructure out in the southwest, northwest, and west of Sydney, why did they allow CBA to go back into Redfern, where it took 7,000 jobs from Parramatta, and look at all the strain that's now put on the local restaurants, cafes, and every other business that was relying on those 7,000 bodies that were attending that workplace day in, day out. So, and why does all the infrastructure point to Sydney? The M2, the M7, the M5, the M4, everything that we built, it all points back into Sydney. So there's only a protected area of Sydney that's being looked after, and the rest could go to hell.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And I keep saying exactly the same, Edwin, that there is an opportunity, if people did see it, to go that differently rather than just chucking up more very cheap property in places where we've already got too much and all the consequences of that. But unfortunately, that is a rather different perspective from the one that many of the politicians are prepared to go down at the moment. Let me go to Tasmania. I just want to show you. Whoops. Let me get you onto there so you can see it. Yeah, this is at Spreyton in Tasmania. 4 beds, 2 baths, 2 cars. Reduced offers 359,000. So a different quantum of price. Property sale high price history December 2015 445,000, and over there in that part of Tasmania, well, the metrics are actually not bad. But I wanted to highlight that in Tasmania we're actually also seeing some slides now, and we had a big run up, of course, in some areas. But there's a lot of property there at the moment, a lot of supply demand disequilibrium, and quite a lot of downward momentum. And I'm seeing it not just in this area, but in other areas of Tasmania too. So for me, this is quite an interesting observation with regards to what many held out as the most, great market to go and buy a property in Tasmania. Well, values aren't necessarily going up.
Well, you got to ask yourself the question: what's in Tasmania? I mean, if somebody finds a Tasmanian devil, I'm going there. I want to see the Tasmanian devil or Tasmanian tiger. I'll go there. But other than that, what else is there? I tried. You could try swimming there, but they tell me that it's pretty treacherous waters. Look, in reality, Martin, it's a small state in terms of population.
Yep.
I've been told that it's an absolutely fabulous state. It's a travesty that they allowed developers and to overdevelop the port area. I think it's a travesty. They should have maintained it as it was, as early as 10 years ago. I know a couple of developers that I did some work for here in Sydney went down there and dipped their toes in the water down there, and they did okay. But again, you've only got to look at what's happening in this situation with the pandemic and this economic downturn. It's really exposed the bad foundations that this economy has been built on or has been relying on.
Yes. Well, I think you're absolutely right. Let me go to another one then. This is Richmond, Victoria. 3 beds, 1 bath, no car space. Advertised sale price 1.25 million. Property sale history. It sold in November 2016 for 1.474 million. And interestingly, if you look at the data on the stress there, 35% in mortgage stress, 28% in rental stress, and 47.6% in investor stress. So here is an area of, Richmond isn't that far from the centre of town. And again, we're seeing significant price drops.
It's interesting how you're showing the actual the asking prices, and I'd suspect a number of these listings are now that they didn't get what they wanted, perhaps at the auctions, and been passing, and then they go into a private treaty campaign, which is something which I'm seeing also here in Sydney, and then from the asking price, then you start working backwards from there. So it's, as I say to people, as I say to my clients, the asking price is one thing, what we offer is another. And we'll meet somewhere below the halfway point. We'll come to an agreement, and so it's. I am interested. Some of my followers on Twitter also shared some stuff that was happening over in Noosa, which is similar price ranges, and you got to wonder why, even at such short periods of holding a property, now they're getting out. It doesn't take Einstein to figure out the many stresses that people are going through at the moment, and hence the reason why. The question is how much longer are others that are on the sidelines going to wait before they start putting their properties on the market? And I have a suspicion that they're waiting for your typical spring season. And well, obviously in Victoria, there's other reasons why they've got to wait. But in Sydney and a lot of the other capital cities, they're waiting for this spring season to kick in before we see this mass dumping of property, which is going to put huge amounts of pressure on the market. And by the way, don't know whether your mate Veronica took up my offer on that. She reckons that more properties on the market is not going to affect property prices in Sydney. Did she take up? I had to go. I had something to do, so I had to leave that podcast.
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting. I'm catching up with Chris Bates. It was due to be tomorrow, but it'll be next week now. And I'm going to play that back to him and see what he says as well, because I thought that was a very interesting observation. And just supply demand. Have some connection.
Well, I mean, I just thought it was rather interesting that somebody. Well, but then again, if you live in the eastern suburbs, anything goes, I guess. Everything else doesn't matter. It's all about the east.
Here's the question then that just perfectly provide. Walk the world, me. Which areas, rural, suburban, or city, will see the least decreases in property values? What do you think about that, Edwin?
I think the way to answer that is we've got to look at the shift, the mind shift that people are going to start adopting moving forward. As I said in previous podcasts, today we've got COVID-19. Tomorrow we're going to have COVID-21. Next year is going to be COVID-25. We're going to be thinking about the way that we live, the way that we go to work, what we do a lot differently than what we have. And I feel that we're going to be moving back into looking for, the mindset's going to be moving more towards looking for space. I mean, I was, went through the lockdown had to bear the lockdown in a three bedroom house. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was in a 3-bedroom house, and I felt sorry for these poor bastards in a 1-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment closer to the city, what they would be going through, particularly the young families. Now, you could go out. I could go out. You could go out onto the backyard, do some exercises, come back in, whatever. But a lot of these people don't have those luxuries. So now people are going to be thinking in that way. So the mind shift's going to change. We're going to. I'm already seeing in some regions outside, just on the outskirts of Sydney, where prices are holding, and in some cases, prices are going. Trending a little bit north, and I get the feel that in these particular areas, I look at what they've got. They've got recent in the last few years. They've had major infrastructure being put in place in those areas, in these areas. Potential for growth. The close proximity to major arterial roads and as well as train lines. But here's the thing. What we've now found out is that 60-70% of the people can actually work from home most of the week and are actually more efficient working from home than they are travelling into the city. So that's going to drive people to look for that extra bit of land, go down from an apartment into a townhouse, from a townhouse into a freestanding home and land, block of land, and maybe go out a little bit further. And this is where the government should take advantage of this and really start and put in place some real serious infrastructure, and should start developing and putting in schools and putting in hospitals and putting in all these facilities that we need in order to decentralise, to decongest the CBD. But they're not really that interested in that. But my view is that people are going to take that option ahead of the government anyway, and are going to take advantage, predominantly because a lot of people can now work from home. So outside of Sydney, I think is where I would, if I was a betting man, I would be putting my money at the moment.
Interesting. That's fascinating. And I certainly have a number of people come to me and said, well, we've actually realised now we don't need to be, right in the city. We could be further out. Cookie Boy made an interesting question. What's the difference between Sydney top end and Melbourne top end? 95% of listings in Sydney are either auction, price guide, or please contact the agent. Melbourne has more prices on their listings. What about this thing about the price not being disclosed either beforehand or indeed the disclosed once the transaction has been actually made? There's a lot of that going on, isn't there, at the moment?
Look, there is, and it's going to take time. A lot of the cases is because the agents are. Don't forget, the agents have been beating the chest for a while now, and now to go back and tell the neighbourhood that they didn't achieve a certain value for a property when they were telling the neighbours how wonderful they were gonna do, and how the auction marketing campaign is by far the best way to sell a property, and therefore, people get conned into paying excessive amounts of extra marketing dollars in order to go to an auction campaign that fizzes away at the end anyway. I mean, you've got this mindset that agents have created, and in order for agents to protect themselves, well, they don't disclose prices. They protect themselves with the locals and with the neighbours, because they're still feeding a lot of the people the narrative that the values are still holding. It's only they only find out themselves that they've been off the mark somewhat, and unfortunately there are a lot of people out there that will still listen to that BS. And it's an unfortunate thing. Another thing that I've heard on the grapevine is that it's that agents, call this a conspiracy, call it whatever you want to call it, but it's something that I've heard, that agents are purposely doing, and they're talking amongst themselves, and this is the surprise. This is what was surprising to me, is that they're not only talking amongst their own officers, but they're talking with other officers in those particular areas in order for not to disclose the prices to both CoreLogic and Domain or REA. In other words, not publish those prices. As I say, whenever you want to change something on REA has the most richest form of data sourcing or data, because in order to change a heading, in order to change the front end, you have to populate the back end. And if you've sold something, you want to put it as sold or under offer, you have to disclose what you sold it for, or give it a range, a short range. And you don't want to upset them, because you don't want to be in their bad books if you put in a BS price, or you put the range too broad apart. But at the end of the day, they can fool a lot of the people this way. It's something that's done on purpose. It should be called on by the REI New South Wales, but they're the toothless tiger anyway, so they're not going to do anything. Most of the agents that belong to the REI New South Wales are the ones that propagate this and underquoting and everything else anyway. At the moment, Fair Trading have got a lot on their hands with regards to getting ready for to begin punishing property management teams for not being compliant and not getting the properties to be compliant with the changes in legislation earlier this year.
Okay, very interesting, and I think that there's a lot of water to go under the bridge before we see the end of all of this. Now, here's an example: Ascot, Queensland. This is a 4007 postcode, 5 bedrooms, 4 baths, 3 cars, advertised at 3.4 million, sold at 3.95 million in 2010. So just to be clear, 2010 to 2020. So essentially selling for less than 10 years ago. And if you look in that particular area, we've got some mortgage stress at 20%, 33% of people in rental stress, and half of investors who are stressed. So some signs there. But this idea of property prices being lower a decade later, I mean, that's something that many people, Edwin, would say never happens.
No, and we're gonna see the exact same examples that Cookie Boy's shown from Queensland. We're going to see the same things here in Sydney. As I said, some of the suburbs here in Sydney we're already tracking on 2015 prices, and some of the suburbs will probably end up going even lower in the near future. And I'm talking about before we hit spring. So it's only a matter of time. It's not if, it's just when. And it's just a timing thing. As I'm being very vigilant of the spring listing period, but then again, Queensland, like I said, I don't know. That's where the Hedonic lives. That's where the head office is for the Hedonic. Can you expect anything else from Queensland? Never. It's. What's the saying? It just it's a state that just keeps on giving.
Very good. Lakemba, New South Wales now, 2195. This is a 4-bed, 2-bath, 4-car. Currently advertised at 1.09 mil. Was sold in February 2018 at 1.1. So no real change in the last 2 or 3 years. So again, questioning the question of, have really prices gone up in the last 2 or 3 years? Obviously, a rise from December 2013. But interestingly here, stress isn't too high, but rental stress at 69.8% is huge. And I think that in some of these inner suburban areas, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, it's rental stress that's really going to bite, because, of course, rental stress translates through to property investors essentially being very much caught, and then being caught with nothing to do but sell.
Yeah, let's not forget these. A lot of these regions as well. We talk about the Chinese students coming over to Australia, but we also got students from everywhere else. You got students from Brazil, Chile, lots of parts of South America, as well as Pakistan, India, and other Middle Eastern countries, or in that particular region there. So it's not just Chinese. It just seems that the areas where the Chinese students dwell in or gravitate toward have gone up in price, dramatically. Now, but a lot of these other areas, your Lakembas, your Punch Bowls, and even going towards your Dulwich Hills and also Dulwich Hills and Marrickville, where you've got a lot of Koreans there, as well as a lot of Korean people that moved in there and so forth. So you've got different demographics. It's I've always felt it's very, very important to note not only the prices but look at the demographics of the area in order to determine what has made certain price points change north or south, or what has the potential to make certain price points go north and south. And often the case is the demographics, who's gravitating towards those areas and those regions and why.
And demographics are very important if you go over to Western Australia. Here's an example from Middle Swan, 3 beds, 2 baths, 1 car. And the story here is that it was reduced to clear at 249. Well, I'm sure that's 249,000. Extra zero by the look of it. It's interesting. But it sold in March 2006 for $247,000. So no change in value from March 2006 to now. And of course, if you take account of inflation, then it's even worse, because of course inflation would have eroded the real value in today's terms. And interestingly over there, well, there is some mortgage stress around 21%, some rental stress around 35%, and around 32% of investors. This is not by any means one of the most stressed postcodes in Western Australia, but WA has a problem, and that is that there are more people migrating away from WA, well, until the borders went down. Now, maybe that's why they shut the borders, to stop people escaping, Edwin. Do you think that's the story?
Yeah, look, I think the only good thing that WA has is Tony Locantro.
Fair enough.
And don't they want to secede from the Commonwealth anyway? Why don't we just let them go? But yeah, WA in most part historically has just been a one-trick pony. Yeah. So apart from that, it's the but perhaps one of the closest cities to Asia, but yet they don't have the universities that Sydney has, Melbourne has, that prestige. It just really, there wasn't an appetite for the Asian market. And like everything else, I mean, that WA has been on a downward trend for about 15, 17 years.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And it's dropped again another 3% or 2.5% in the last quarter. And in some places, if I take, I have to Mandurah, right, the one I keep going back to, prices are 38% lower than their peak. Right, 38% down, and we've got massive amounts of mortgage stress, massive amounts of negative equity, and of course the social consequences of many years of falls in property to be seen on the streets. And my worry, Edwin, is that some of the stuff that we're seeing over in the West, based on the last 5 years, we're going to see it in the East Coast, because we're going to see very high levels of unemployment. We're going to see lots of people struggling with their mortgages and those sorts of things. And therefore, I wouldn't be surprised to see somewhat similar behaviour now spreading into some of the eastern postcodes as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. It's just going to be interesting to see how we batten down the hatches and what we do. There's going to be a lot of people moving back home. A lot of people are going to be, really making use of the students' accommodation, or the granny flats, or turning the garages into temporary accommodation until they get themselves back on their feet. But that's what you have to do when you're going through a recession. Let alone, we could almost be walking into a depression. There's going to be a lot of belt tightening, and unfortunately, regardless of how much free money is given out, regardless of how it's just putting people more and more into debt, and stupidly putting more and more people into debt, rather than creating real infrastructure, rather than creating real industry. We're just giving away free money. This is absolutely ludicrous. It's pathetic what our politicians are doing. Free money and is not the answer to, if we're going to turn this thing around. We are a fighting nation. We can fight. Let's fight, and let's create the infrastructure. Let's build and go back to how we used to build, as opposed to putting up these flimsy shacks and selling them at a premium, or because the foreign dollar became the temptation for many developers and for many government bodies, because of stamp duty and because of other duties that they were able to usurp from this one-trick pony that the federal government has been sitting on, and that is the construction industry.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, of course, isn't it? Hawthorn SA now, just briefly, 5062, 2-bed, 1-bath, 1 garage. I just wanted to say that the stress levels here are relatively low compared with other places, but nevertheless, recently advertised at 250,000. It sold for 245,000 in 2016, so there's very little action there since then. And there was a run-up earlier than that, back in January 2010, but between then and now, the prices are pretty much flat. And again, whilst everybody's been talking about the fact that South Australia and Adelaide and all those places to go look there, they are certainly a little cheaper, but there hasn't necessarily been massive amounts of growth. And even now, it looks to me as though prices could be easing back as well, because they do have unemployment issues there now, and the lockdown, spilling over from Victoria, of course, is also having an impact as well. So I thought that was quite an interesting one. I'll just go on for one more here. I'm going to come back to Blacktown. This is, of course, your sort of home patch, as it were, Edwin. So this is three beds, 1 bath, two car. Recently sold. Price estimates for 3 months won't be shown. Now, that behaviour, we discussed it earlier on, but I think it's quite relevant. It's worth noting that basically in 2016, it was worth 635,000. In 2020, when it last sold, it was 649,000, and then now it's sold again. So another example of things churning quite quickly. And there we're seeing 47% of people in mortgage stress, 68% in rental stress, 44% of the investors living there in stress. So Blacktown, what's the story of Blacktown, Edwin?
Oh, it's the same story that you and I've spoken for a while, and that is people just went crazy buying these larger blocks of land and being allowed to build granny flats and getting dual rental income. So when the tenants vacate, there's obviously going to be a lot of mortgage stress there and a lot of rental stress with Blacktown. Let's not forget that a lot of these homes, and Blacktown is an old town. There's a lot of these homes require a lot of maintenance, require a lot of work, and that there are added costs to investors. So when you've got rents dropping from say $500 a week down to $350 a week, and in some cases down to zero, and for months on end, you've got a problem on your hands, and you've got one choice. You can either ride it out and put after-tax money from what you've earned into that investment, or let the investment go and just take a hit in the chin and walk away. But that's one thing. The other thing is you've got a lot of subdivisions that also happen in and around Blacktown that then the older properties just got left on by the wayside, and it was just sort of kept on building more and more. So we got into the issues of the Doc Wilson, and that is, we ran out of land. As far as I think the Cookie Boy will know, and that is that there's not enough land in Blacktown and all those areas out there to continue to build. So obviously prices had to go up, and we had to build skyscrapers next door to McDonald's and next to the railway line. I mean, it was just all farcical what people were doing, and a lot of the investors in the Blacktown region, and those regions, the Mount Druitts, the Blacktowns, the St. Mary's, and even in the newer parts, of Schofield and Jordan Springs and that, a lot of them were investors from closer in town, where investors that went into the spruiking seminars, and they basically got sold the story that could get dual incomes, and that but let's face it, there was a time where Cookie Boy and we priced the value of land in Blacktown. I think we got up to $1,246 a square metre in Blacktown. I mean, we were just gobsmacked when we were doing those, when we were pulling those figures from comparable sales and in land sales in Blacktown. So you've got a lot of different issues. So obviously there was also a lot of migrants that went into Blacktown from the Indian communities. You've got your temple there. You've got there's some good sized blocks, and also you've got your rail network, as well as the M7 and all the infrastructure and you could get on and about. So at one stage that was the driver, but again, when you've got students from these regions, from India and Pakistan, having to go back home and then leaving these places vacant, and short-term stay visas, or the short-term stay visas and people had to go back. Well, then there's a major problem. No different to a lot of your Parramattas and your Kellyvilles and your inner west areas and all these other areas, where there was a lot of Epping, Hurstville and so forth, where you got Asian communities that were predominantly reliant on tourism, Chinese tourism, Asian tourism, and students.
Yeah, and of course there's still a lot of new construction going on there too, isn't there? So there's the old and the new all fighting for the same for the same buyers, right?
That was one of the things, Martin, that it'd be good to mention once again, and that is I kept on saying to a lot of property managers in Blacktown they had to adjust the rents, and I educated a number of them, and that was because of the simple thing that I would say, look, you either get your landlords to drop the rents, otherwise they're going to end up with no tenant. And then they go, well, they say to me, well, where else would they go? And I say, well, they go to Schofields, they'll go to Box Hill, or they go to the newer subdivisions a bit further out, and then they'd say to me, but the tenants won't travel further out. That means that'll place them a lot further to go to work. And I'd say, how many tenants in the Blacktown region actually work?
Yeah.
There's a lot of reliance in government government benefits, and that's the nature of that beast.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Let me just show you another one. This is South Coast, Kiama. So it's south of me down here. It's quite interesting because it's a bit unusual. So 4 beds, 2 baths, 2 cars, 2533 the postcode. And advertised at 1.25 mil currently, sold in October 2016 at 1.4 mil, and the stress, 42% in mortgage stress, 44% in rental stress, 23% in investor stress, and we're seeing that in a number of these South Coast areas where in fact prices are not holding at all, and despite all the spruiking and despite all of the claims of undersupply, we are again seeing prices on the way down. So it's quite a consistent pattern, and I think that it's something worth reflecting on, Edwin, about some of the regional areas out from Sydney and Melbourne and places like that. There seems to be more volatility and more movement on the downside, but if you go close into the centre of town, into Sydney or into Melbourne, the question is there more stability there, or do you think we're going to see precisely the same?
You're talking about closer to in terms of the price drops?
Yeah, the price drops, yes. So my argument is we're seeing them quite consistently now. If you look down Sutherland Way, if you come down the coast, go down towards Kiama, pretty much all the locations there are definitely now beginning to slide. The question is, closer in, is there going to be a different dynamic, or we're going to see the same?
I think the dynamic is going to be the same for a while until it all levels out. Look, in the future, I'm not saying how much more these areas, the Kiamas and all these regions, the South Coast regions, how much further they're going to go down in value. It could drop another 20%, could drop another 30%. Who knows? I mean, it's going to, but I think we'll get a fair idea, because it's although you'll see huge drops or what we say cliff-hanging drops in some of these regions, but I think they'll taper out. And the reason why I say that they'll taper out is once that new mindset of who wants to live further out in these regions comes back on, I'd say that people are going to start looking for the South Coast and the North Coast for properties, because once again they don't have to travel on a regular basis to go to work. So look, the dynamics, it's going to be interesting. We're really juggling swords, but this time these swords are on fire with regards to what's happening in a lot of these areas. So it's again rather than me putting a figure as to how much they're going to drop before they start tapering out, I'd just say to people, just keep your eye on the key indicators there, which is listings on market, and just monitor the properties in your local area, wherever you want to be buying into, or potentially looking to buy into. But definitely, we're going to get a lot of sudden drops in a lot of pockets of Sydney and the outskirts of Sydney. So when I say that things are going to taper out, I'm not talking about in the next few months. I'm talking about perhaps 12 months down the track, 18 months down the track. So we don't know. how these areas are going to cope, and who's actually holding on to property in a lot of these areas as well. What I have noticed is that the people that are more keen to letting go of property that at lesser values in a lot of the parts that I'm searching for here in Sydney are people that have held on to these properties for longer than 20, 30 years because they bought at, let's say, $300,000 and effectively they're getting offered 1.2, albeit the properties may have been worth 1.4, 1.5. But they're thinking to themselves, bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. And the two in the bush later on could mean 900,000 or even lower. So it's as you mentioned in that podcast with Veronica, you have to really look at the markets and scrutinize the it's a micro market, not a macro market in that regard, and we've got to really be granular when it comes to particularly with these regions. But look, a year down the track, 2 years down the track, 2.5 years down the track, I see these regions dropping. How far they'll drop, I don't know, but they will come back up because of the mindset with regards to work, and if there's any future pandemics or any future viruses or world events that are gonna put us in this the current situations that we're going through.
Well, Connor made a comment. I'll try and get it if I can, to say that people are holding off as long as they can, but once word gets out that things are looking dodgy property-wise, the panic will settle in. We are before that stage, though, at the moment. So, there are some signs, but I think he's sort of a little bit right. It hasn't yet arrived, but it could well arrive.
Yeah, and that's going to be, I think, one of the indicators as to how we're really on a track towards the end of the year is like I said, the spring selling season, because historically, traditionally, that is one of the most transacted seasons that we've got. Now that's going to be very very interesting. As I said, we're already we're going through these changes. And what Cookie Boy's shown and the things that I've shared with you as well and with our viewers, the different listings, it's only just the beginning. We're not talking about halfway point or 3/4 way point or towards the end. This is just the beginning of what's about to come. So we're going into a ring, and we don't know whether we're going to come up against Mike Tyson. At 19, Mike Tyson at 35, Mike Tyson at 37, or Mike Tyson at 54. Regardless of the age, it's just the beginning of the fight. And Mike Tyson's Mike Tyson. He's going to beat the crap out of us if we do step in the ring with him, regardless. So what I'm trying. This is just the beginning. So it's an unknown, and if we're seeing this. The turbulence of what we're seeing now, I guess I liken it a bit like you're going down the rapids, and you've just got on your kayak, and you just just push off the first rock, and you say, oh gee, this is great, this is fun, and then all of a sudden, but what you don't realise is that you're going to the Caracas, as you go around as you meander down the river, and then all of a sudden you're faced with the Caracas waterfalls or the Niagara Falls, and I feel that's where we're headed.
And somebody asked just now on the chat, how long is this downturn going to last for? Nobody knows, right? I mean, this could, if you look at the US, prices fell for 3 to 4 years quite strongly after the global financial crisis. The worst of the defaults and the worst of the price falls, though, were delayed by 2 to 3 years. So if we follow a similar trajectory, then this suggests this could be a 2 to 3 year thing, but with prices going down, might be quicker, might be slower. But it's hard to know, isn't it? Because we haven't got the COVID under control. We don't know precisely what the global financial picture will be, and we don't know how much stimulus will be thrown in to try and support the market. So it's very difficult to call it, but I think down is definitely the trajectory.
Yeah, we're going to be here. We're going to be here for the long haul. It's not going to be. It's not going to be a. You go to sleep one night and you pick up the Sydney Morning Herald the next day, or better still, you pick up a domain article on your browser the next day, and it's all fluffy pillows and bonbons. We're in for the long haul. Again, you don't have to be rocket science to figure out that Chinese students are not going to come back into the country for another year or possibly two, maybe even longer. Depends on how this political thing pans out with China. We're not in the good books with China, so tourism and students are off the cards for minimum 12 months, 18 months, minimum. That's just the minimum. That's just the beginning. Secondly, how long before we open up our international borders, and who do we open up our international borders to? America's in the proverbial poop hole. South America's going the same way. Europe looks like it's seeing some sort of reprieve, but it's only a matter of time. So, I mean, the only other thing that I can think of is before things before we start preparing to some sort of normality, is when is this vaccine going to be available, regardless of whether you believe it or not, or regardless of what you believe the COVID is or not. Until the majority of the people have this guarantee that there's going to be a vaccine for COVID-19 and we can get rolling again, the economies aren't going to move forward. We're just going to retract. We're just going to regress, and we're going to. And with regards to property, the biggest thing that I've been saying for many years that's going to unwind us and going to make us come unstuck, and in a magnificent way, is the oversupply. People just don't realise how much vacant property is out there in the marketplace in reality. Let alone the property that is owned by overseas interests, that sooner than later they've got to decide whether or not they're going to hold or they're going to sell because of the issues that they're facing in China. They hold a mass amount of property, and a lot of people will say, "Yeah, but that's just new apartments. We've got no interest in that." No, I can tell you now, 30, if not 35% of the property interests that they hold through companies and they hold through trusts, because they found ways and loopholes, and accountants here showed them ways and loopholes in order to get to circumvent the FIRB requirements. So they hold freestanding homes, they hold established properties, but we're going to see, once we start seeing these being dumped, like I said, is it going to be a 35% drop? Is it going to be a 45% drop? Is it going to be a 55% drop? It's going to be a drop anywhere from 30 to 60% across the board, and depending on what side of the street you're standing on, depending on what suburb you're in, and depending on what type of property you bought. So, but it's going to be one massive, if I can say it, one shit show.
Well, somebody made the point that prices are down, down. The question is, of course, how far, how long? But yeah, there isn't a huge amount of expectation. And even some of the old bulls, who actually a few weeks ago were talking about property prices rising, they've now changed their tune too. And I just come back to levels of unemployment being very high, the fact that the financial situation is very insecure, the health situation is very insecure, and you put all that together and you say, yeah, it's definitely on the way down rather than not. I just want to do an NT one because I don't think I did one. This is Angia in NT 812, 539,000 for sale, sold in August 2012 for 618,000. So you can see there that the NT has really been under the gun, and up in the NT, rental stress is a big deal in lots of locations, 45% here, 38% in mortgage stress, and a little bit of investor stress too. And I know the NT is a small market, but I wanted just to demonstrate the fact that we actually do also cover the all the territories and states. I think we've done it. Everybody but the ACT haven't done the ACT. Just not enough data came through to be able to do that. Yeah, Edwin. So, I mean, there's a lot of concerns. I guess what I'd like to do is, as we sort of just pull the conversation to a close, is to say, if you were sitting on a property with limited equity at the moment, how seriously would you consider trying to sell and releasing the equity before it disappears?
As Tony Locantro has pointed out, and I've also mentioned, and that is that the smarter ones have already gone.
Right.
And it's only time is diminishing what you're holding, what little equity you're holding, and the longer you leave it, the more you're gonna lose. There is no, at the moment, there are no indicators to show us that the market is going to tick upwards. I'm not seeing it locally. I'm not seeing it in the regions that I've also searched for personal interests. I'm not seeing it in states or other capital cities that I've searched for personal interests. I don't see anything else in terms of locally. When I say locally, in terms of Australia, economically, where there's no indicator that's showing that we're going to be ticking upwards anytime soon. All we're seeing is if we have another shit show with China, potentially China could pull the iron ore contracts, and then what do we do? I mean, tourism is gone. The education, students, and that's gone. We've really only relying on basically the mining sector for the government to show that it's making anything. Now, and then on a global scale, nobody's really clapping and cheering and saying, "Look at us, we're doing great. We're going. Our economy is bouncing back up again." I know many would like to think that they are, or would like to see it, but optimism does not necessarily translate into reality. I'm optimistic when I jump in the ring with the young 25, 27-year-olds. I'm optimistic that I'm going to land a few punches before they knock the living daylights out of me. But optimism doesn't always turn into reality. And that, so the indicators aren't there. What I am seeing, Martin, which is rather sad, is the fact that I'm seeing Mother Nature kick back harder and harder. And we're seeing fires locally. Now we're seeing floods. And then I look back and I look at how, and that's just at a local level, let alone at a global level. Not even talking about the three gorgeous dams in China and everything else. But in a local level, we're seeing flooding in New South Wales. We're seeing flooding in the Newcastle region and in the South Coast. We saw bushfires, at the beginning of the year. We're going through COVID, so Mother Nature is really kicking back, and the bad construction is gonna come unstuck. Is really gonna be exposed. The tide's going to go out, and we're really going to see who's been swimming naked, as they say, in regard to the construction, and who's holding what with regard to these with regard to these buildings. I mean, albeit it was only a small truck that went into a pothole or a sinkhole in at Double Bay somewhere, but we're going to see a lot more of that because the winter seems to be a lot wetter. And a lot of these buildings that are sitting on water tables, that are sitting the basement car parks are sitting below the river lines, and all the issues that we've had in the past with this high-rise development. And then I look at the flooding in Newcastle, and I'm reminded of the fact that Newcastle sits on old coal mines. Didn't we mine in that region for about 200 years or so? And yet we've got this city, and you've got this high-rise development going up everywhere in Newcastle, and that's just another ticking time bomb. Yeah, the prices they've hit records of selling penthouses up there of late and the like, but I look at the broader picture. Perhaps I look too much into the broader picture, and sometimes I have to go to bed early and go under the covers because I scare myself. it's only the fact that I've got the Hedonic the next day to have a tiff with that I'm able to wake up and get out of bed.
Very good. Now, just Nelson just said, did Edwin say 30 to 60% price drop? So just to say it again, that's what you said, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yep. And interestingly, my scenarios have a range of scenarios, including that range too.
Well, let's look at what's happening at the moment. What's not reported. This is the thing. I'm looking in some areas at 12% price drops already. Cookie Boy's shown in some of those examples there of how much property is being, and that's only in a short period of time. Like I said, we're only just walking into this shit show. This is if you think, I recommend everybody to go out and get yourself a mouth guard and get yourself one of these from your local sports store, because there's going to be some carnage up ahead, and we're going to have some head-on collisions in the property market, in the property arena. There's going to be a lot of carnage out there, and we've still got JobKeeper going. We've still got the extra payment to job seeker. We still got the bank loans on holidays, extended holidays, and it's only recently that the banks are tightening up the credit lending facilities, to 6 times your income and so forth. But even then, you've got the government throwing out free money. So how long is this party going to go for before you wake up with a massive migraine, or if not, before you wake up, wrapped around a telegraph pole?
Yeah. It's interesting. Here's one that somebody's just sent in. Nishant Sharma said, been looking for a home 3 months now. Why are Cherrybrook and Castle Hill areas going up and up and up? Well, of course, the question is, are they really?
Yeah, well, I don't know what. Maybe he's looking at the core logic data.
Yeah.
Because what I'm seeing in the Kellyville, Winston Hill, the Borkham Hills, there's a few properties I'm chasing for some clients in those in that area, and we're looking at what people bought these properties for in 2015. Price guide's just a little bit above that, and offers, I know by talking to the agents, have come in below the 2015 purchase prices. So I guess maybe the search isn't wide enough, and again, it all comes back to what type of property. Like there are some that went to an auction as well in Borkham Hills on Saturday, and it went probably $100,000 above what I thought it would go for. But then again, you can't stop stupid. You can't stop stupid when you've got two couples literally eyeing each other out, going toe to toe for the last 100,000 on there, and when one of them could have walked away with a property $100,000 cheaper, but the wives got into it, and then the husbands got into it, and one got louder than the other. I was about to pull my phone out because I thought they were going to pull out switchblades and really go for each other. That's how serious that auction got. But you can't stop stupid. But then a lot of others that I've gone to have been passed in and nobody's raised the paddle. And as I said, post auction, the guides are actually, when you do a little bit of investigating, the guides are a little bit below purchase price of 2015, 2016.
Yep. And Michael Patterson said, it's fair to say Edwin is a bit bearish.
Yeah, look, I am a bit bearish, but So
realistic.
Yeah. Well, as I said, let's have this discussion. Let's have this discussion again with regard specifically like this in spring when we get 20,000 listings plus in Sydney. That's going to be the kicker. And I'd say that if we track above 20,000, if we track towards your 25,000 listings online, and okay, let's make it more specific. At the moment, we're tracking about 8,500 freestanding homes, because apartments, there's a hell of a lot more apartments for sale than what they let on anyway. So let's go with homes. At the moment, homes we're tracking at about I think as of today we're at about 8,325 or something like that. Last week we got up to 8,495 or 97. I thought we were going to tip the 8.5. But if we start tracking freestanding homes above 11,000, we're going to start to see some real pain, some serious pain, that the mainstream media are going to start talking about it. They're going to start picking it up because of the price falls. I'm already seeing it, folks. I'm already seeing it. I'm out there, and I don't just look at one pocket. I'm looking at 4 regions of Sydney that encompass anywhere up to 8 to 10 suburbs. So I dare say that if it's happening there in these regions, it's happening broader afield. But as Toorak and we've said, and you've said, Martin, as well, there's a lot of free money at the moment. The mortgages are on a honeymoon period, or on a holiday period, and I call it a honeymoon period. People aren't saving, people are spending, stupidly, and sooner than later, businesses are going to begin to shut down, and then it's going to be on. And I think, as I said, I'm picking my point, my mark, and I say 30 to 60 it's not going to be unheard of, because I'm already seeing 12-15% in freestanding homes in the North Shore already drop. So it's that's what it is.
It's game on, isn't it? Edwin, I appreciate your time today. It's been a fascinating conversation, and we only touched the surface. What I'll do is I will he's putting his hat back on. I must show you that. It's absolutely hilarious. There we go. Very good. He's kitting up, ready to go. One more round with the Hedonic. Somebody asked you to say Hedonic again, so keep on going after the Hedonic. Really appreciate your time today. That's been really interesting. I just want to do a couple of quick closing remarks. Firstly, acknowledge to T-Tal for his contribution for YouTube. Thank you very much. Happy Robot, thanks very much for that. Death and Regret, we I think answered your question with regard to the high levels of mortgage stress in Queensland. We're seeing it the same way as New South Wales and Victoria. And Ben the Knee asked about Rozelle and suburbs. I think we've touched on some of those suburbs. Steven said got passed in at 9:40. This is in Bexley. This type of behaviour makes me believe that property isn't going down. Well, we've heard some alternative narratives there in Nefi. Thank you for your contribution as well. So appreciate all of those who took the smart chat. I just want to make a couple of other observations before I've closed off. Firstly, if you want more information about DFA, you can always go to the DFA blog. There's a lot of information there. You can also go onto Patreon, and if you want to get hold of all of the stress data, there is a Patreon service, $50 a month plus GST, to get all of the stress data. Or if you want my full data set, that's available too. So have a look at that. Got quite a few people who've asked for particular postcodes. If you want data for a postcode, send me requests into the DFA blog, and I'll try and turn it around over a couple of days. Getting quite a few of those at the moment. Or if you want to make a contribution to DFA, there is the PayPal option, and I do appreciate those who use that, or indeed even Bitcoin if you really want to go high tech. There's also DFA merch, as I think I may have mentioned before, including mugs and things, and some people have actually chosen to go that route. Details there, and also on the YouTube. And a few call-outs in terms of recent posts. The Locantro post, worth listening to. This series around the property in the depths, Toorak Brooker's conversation, the conversation with Harry Dent, I think he's wrong on gold, but that's another story for another day. And the economic and fiscal twilight zone, that's been a very popular one. So if you haven't seen those, go check them out. And next week I will be on again, same time, same station, with my latest property scenarios and stress updates, because it'll be early August, so I'll have the July data. So that's going to be the next show. And Edwin, I'll just come back to you and say thank you so much for sharing your thoughts this evening and spending time with us. It's really been much appreciated by the audience. We got well over 1,600 at the peak, so well done. You hold the new record once again. Congratulations. And maybe when we run the next one later on in the year, there'll be even more demand for your perspectives, and we'll try and get over 2,000, but that's tremendous. So that's the record for live streams, so I appreciate that.
Well, I want you to put me and Veronica Morgan toe to toe.
Okay.
And we can discuss the effects of listing numbers in the Sydney market.
Okay. Well, I shall float that, and if she's up for it, I'll get you and her to come on and have a bit of a debating session. I think that could be quite fun.
No worries. No, always a pleasure, Martin. Always fun. And please put out my Twitter handle out there for the viewers and anybody who wants to follow me, as I do share a lot of my adventures out there on particularly on Saturdays at auction days, and people have fun, and I make it as enjoyable as I can.
Thanks, Edwin. We'll put all your contact details in below, and really appreciate it, all your efforts. Thanks to Cookie Boy for all the data that's gone in. I will use some of the other examples that we didn't get through tonight and future posts, so we will go on highlighting specific property movements in particular locations to try and give people a sense of what's going on. And Plexus, thanks very much for moderating once again. So with that, I'm just going to sign off now, and really appreciate everybody's time tonight. Thank you very much for spending time with us. Thanks for all of those who've contributed by way of the conversation or by the smart chat. Mark your diary for next week, and of course the week after that I'll be back with a debate on China with Robbie Barwick and Salvador Babanes. So that'll be another interesting debate in 2 weeks' time. But next week it's me and my updated scenarios, and bearing in mind what we're seeing, that'll be worth watching. Have a good evening, take care, keep safe, see you next time. Martin North, Digital Finance, signing off. Cheers.